You meet people every day. They smile, they joke, they listen. But if you look closely, something feels off. There's a pause before they laugh, a slight tightness around the eyes, a shift in tone when certain subjects arise. It's as if the person standing in front of you isn't calm with themselves, but a reflection of what they think you want to see. That's the moment Nietzsche would lean in and whisper, "Be careful. You are not seeing the person. You are seeing their mask." Humans, Nietzsche believed, are not born honest. They are born performers. Society trains us to become likable, moral, useful. From childhood, we learn to hide hunger, rage, jealousy, fear, because we are told those parts are unacceptable. And so we construct the mask, the polite face, the humble voice, the safe version of ourselves. And slowly, we forget the difference between who we are and who we perform to be. Nietzsche wrote, "Every deep thinker fears being understood." He meant that the truest parts of us, the chaotic, wild, imperfect truths, are too vulnerable to show. So we wear masks not out of deception, but out of self-protection. But what happens when the mask takes over? When the performance becomes the person? That's the tragedy Nietzsche warned against, and the power he wanted us to reclaim. Because when you understand the mask, you understand the truth mechanism of human nature. He once said, "We are all artists of our own lives, but art," he warned, "can become illusion." Most people wear their masks so long that they begin to believe them. The kind man who hides resentment under a calm tone. The confident woman who hides self-doubt behind charm. The moral preacher who hides hunger for control under virtue. Nietzsche saw all this and asked the uncomfortable question: what if sincerity itself is just another mask? He didn't mean that truth doesn't exist, but that truth is always filtered through layers of fear, desire, and power. That means every person you meet, no matter how open they seem, is negotiating between who they are and who they want to appear to be. And here's the dark part. You do it too. You smile to avoid conflict. You nod when you disagree. You soften your tone so people don't call you difficult. You hide pain behind intelligence. That's the mask. We all wear it, every hour, every day. But Nietzsche didn't see this as evil. He saw it as inevitable. Because beneath every mask is a will, a force that drives behavior. He called it the will to power. It's not about domination. It's about direction. The will to shape the world, to control how others see you, to survive on your own terms. Every mask is a strategy, a shield forged by that will. When you understand that, you stop taking things personally. Someone ignores you. That's their mask reacting, not their soul. Someone flatters you. That's their strategy, not their truth. Someone acts cold and distant. Maybe that's protection, not rejection. Nietzsche believed that maturity begins the day you realize every interaction is theater. And yet, this realization isn't meant to make you cynical. It's meant to make you awake. To see through the mask, you don't rip it off. You observe it perform. Because when people perform, they reveal what they're trying to hide. The louder the virtue signal, the deeper the insecurity. The calmer the tone in conflict, the greater the fear of loss. The more someone insists they're fine, the more chaos burns underneath. Nietzsche saw this contradiction as the most honest truth of all, that the mask is both the lie and the confession. Every mask says two things: "This is who I want to be," and "This is what I'm afraid you'll see." That's the duality you must learn to read. Let's say you're speaking to someone who always dominates conversation. Their mask is loud, confident, assertive, unshakable. But if you study their pauses, you might notice a flicker of insecurity when they're interrupted. That's not confidence. That's compensation. Their mask isn't power. It's armor. Or think of the friend who always plays the victim. Their mask wins sympathy, attention, protection. But Nietzsche would ask, what desire hides beneath the helplessness? Maybe it's control, the ability to manipulate care from others. Maybe it's safety, a strategy to avoid responsibility. Once you see the will beneath the mask, you stop being fooled by appearances. You begin to understand what Nietzsche called the psychology of power. Here's the paradox. The more you understand others' masks, the more you must confront your own. Because once you see how masks are built, you can't unsee how you built yours. Ask yourself, what do you hide behind your smile? What part of you do you silence so people keep liking you? When did you first learn that truth was dangerous? This is where the dark method begins. It's not about judging others. It's about awareness. Because once you understand the mechanism of the mask, you can move freely in a world full of performances without being trapped by them. The secret, Nietzsche would say, is not to unmask others violently, but to become the kind of person who no longer needs a mask to survive. But to reach that state, you must first learn to recognize the mask's patterns, the tells, the motives, the fractures in the performance. And that's what we uncover next. Because seeing the mask isn't the hardest part. Understanding why it exists, that's where the real power lies. Every mask hides something. But Nietzsche believed that if you look closely enough, you can always see the will behind it, the raw, unfiltered force that drives a person's behavior. He called it the will to power. And no, it wasn't about politics, money, or ego. It was deeper than that. It was the invisible hand behind every choice, every smile, every lie. According to Nietzsche, every human being, whether they admit it or not, is trying to assert control over their environment, their image, or their inner chaos. Even kindness, he said, can be a form of power. Even silence can be domination in disguise. So, if you truly want to see through someone's mask, you must stop listening to what they say and start watching what their will wants. Imagine this. You're at a table with 5 people. They're all laughing, talking, smiling, masks everywhere. But Nietzsche would tell you, don't get lost in the noise. Observe the flow of energy. Who interrupts whom? Who seeks validation with their eyes? Who controls the rhythm of the conversation? Who stays quiet, not out of shyness, but to create mystery? That's how you start to see the will to power at work. It's subtle. It hides behind politeness. But once you notice it, you can never unsee it. The friend who always lets others speak might secretly crave moral superiority. The one who always jokes about themselves might be demanding reassurance. The calm, composed person might be exerting control by staying emotionally unavailable. The key is, every mask is an attempt to survive through control. Nietzsche once wrote, "Where I found a living creature, I found will to power." To him, life itself is will, the constant struggle to rise, to shape, to impose meaning where there is none. And when people cannot express that will honestly, they disguise it. They turn it into morality, humility, empathy, or sometimes self-pity. But underneath it all, the desire remains, to feel significant, to matter, to not be crushed by the chaos of existence. So when you study a person, don't ask, what are they showing me? Ask, what do they want from me? Do they want control, respect, attention, redemption, forgiveness? That question cuts through every act. Because people may not know what they're redoing, but their will always leaks through their actions. You can hear it in the tone of their voice when they say, "It's fine." You can see it in the way they look when you don't give them what they expect. You can feel it in the tension of their smile, like a mask trying not to crack. And here's the part that makes Nietzsche's philosophy so darkly liberating. He said the will to power is not good or bad. It simply is. It's not evil. It's nature. So the person manipulating you isn't necessarily wicked. They're just human. They want something, like everyone else. Once you understand that, their power over you dissolves. Because control only works when you react emotionally. When you see it for what it is, just a will expressing itself, it loses its grip. Nietzsche believed that those who see through appearances become beyond good and evil. That doesn't mean immoral, it means untouchable. You stop labeling people as good or bad. You start understanding them as forces, each playing out their will in their own way. It's like standing above the storm instead of being swept by it. You see the patterns, the need for validation, the hunger for superiority, the fear of rejection, and you realize everyone is just trying to survive their own weakness. Let's take a real example. Think about someone who constantly seeks attention online. They post perfect pictures, deep quotes, emotional confessions. It looks like expression, but Nietzsche would call it performance. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking power. Power through approval. Power through visibility. They've mistaken attention for meaning. That's their mask, the illusion that being seen equals being known. Or take the opposite, the person who withdraws completely, claiming to not care about people. That's not detachment, it's another form of control. They create distance not because they're free, but because closeness threatens to reveal their fragility. Their power lies in withholding. Nietzsche said, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." In other words, even self-hatred is a form of power. It gives a person something to cling to when everything else is lost. So the next time you meet someone, anyone, don't be distracted by words or gestures. Ask yourself, what is this person's will trying to do right now? Are they trying to rise or hide, to dominate or be accepted, to love or to be needed? That single question changes everything. Because once you see the will, you see the person beneath the mask, often terrified, often lonely, but always reaching for something that gives them strength. And here's the irony Nietzsche understood. Most people don't even know they're wearing masks. They've worn them for so long they've mistaken them for skin. When you confront them with truth, they'll resist. Not because they hate you, but because you've threatened the foundation of their self-image. That's why Nietzsche called truth a knife. It doesn't comfort, it cuts. But through that cut, light enters. It's how you see people as they are, not as they pretend to be. And once you learn to read the will behind the mask, something profound happens. You become harder to fool, harder to manipulate, harder to control. Because power games lose their meaning when you see the strings attached. This is the beginning of the dark method, the Nietzschean ability to see the hidden will behind the performance. But to truly master it, you must turn that gaze inward. Because Nietzsche warned, the one who fights monsters must take care that he does not become a monster himself. Seeing through others' masks is easy. Seeing through your own, that's where the real challenge begins. And that's what we'll explore next. There's one truth Nietzsche believed most people never face, that the hardest mask to see through is your own. We all think we understand ourselves. We say, I'm honest, I'm loyal, I'm kind. But Nietzsche would laugh at that. Not because those things aren't true, but because they're half-truths. They are parts of an image we've built, a version of ourselves we want to believe in. He called this the noble lie, the comforting illusion that shields us from our darker drives. Because if we were to truly face what lies beneath, we'd have to confront something terrifying. That much of what we call good in ourselves is often rooted in fear. Take generosity. Most people give because it makes them feel moral, needed, or admired. It's not selfless, it's strategic. It's a trade. I give, therefore I am good. Or honesty. Sometimes people pride themselves on telling it like it is, not to help others, but to feel powerful, righteous, or superior. Nietzsche saw through all this. He said, "We are unknown to ourselves, we men of knowledge, and with good reason. We have never sought ourselves. We wear masks not only to hide from others, but to survive ourselves. Because deep inside, beneath the confidence, the morality, the humor, there's a chaos we don't want to meet. Desires we deny. Weaknesses we disguise. Fears we rationalize." He believed every human carries a shadow, the part of us we've rejected, repressed, or denied. The part that whispers, I'm jealous, I'm cruel, I want power, I want to win. And instead of facing it, we project it. We see arrogance in others because we secretly crave recognition. We hate manipulation because we fear our own potential to deceive. We judge greed, lust, or anger, but deep down we're just afraid of those forces within us. That's why Nietzsche called self-honesty a battlefield. Because to see through your own mask, you must become both the hunter and the hunted. You have to watch yourself like a stranger and admit that not every good act you do is pure. Picture this. You're helping a friend through a hard time. You listen, you advise, you comfort. But a part of you, a small, secret part, enjoys being the wise one. That part feeds your ego. It tells you you're better, more grounded, more aware. That's the mask within the mask. And Nietzsche wanted us to catch it in action. Because the person who sees through others but not themselves is still blind. True vision begins when you realize you are also playing a game. Nietzsche's dark advice was this: observe your motives as if they belong to someone else. Don't defend yourself, study yourself. Every time you act, ask, what am I really getting from this? What hidden will is guiding me? If you feel moral outrage, ask, is this about justice or control? If you feel hurt, ask, is this about love or pride? If you want revenge, ask, is this about fairness or power? This kind of self-analysis is brutal, but it's also freeing, because once you know your own drives, no one can use them against you. When someone flatters you, you'll know exactly why it feels good, and you won't fall for it. When someone insults you, you'll recognize the sting not as truth, but as ego. You'll stop being a puppet of your emotions because you'll see the strings and who's pulling them. Nietzsche believed that the moment you stop lying to yourself, you begin to rise above yourself. He called this self-overcoming, the process of tearing away illusion after illusion until only raw truth remains. It's not comfortable. It's not peaceful. It's war. But it's the only path to true freedom. Because most people think freedom means doing whatever they want. But for Nietzsche, freedom means being so aware of your own motives that nothing owns you, not guilt, not desire, not fear. Let's put this in real terms. Imagine you're in an argument. You want to win. You say things you don't fully believe, just to dominate. Then later you justify it by saying, I was right anyway. That's your mask protecting your ego. But if you stop and say, no, I wanted to win more than I wanted the truth, something powerful happens. You take your will back. You see the truth of yourself without shame. That's self-mastery. And Nietzsche believed only a few people in the world ever reach it, because most are terrified to look that deep. They prefer comfort over clarity, illusion over insight, but he said, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Meaning, only by facing your inner chaos can you ever create something real, something luminous, something unshakable. Once you've faced your own mask, something shifts. You stop expecting honesty from the world, because you understand how rare it is. You stop being shocked by hypocrisy, because you've seen it in yourself. You stop judging others harshly, because you recognize their struggle is the same as yours. And in that moment, you reach a strange kind of peace. You don't need to expose others anymore. You don't need to be right or admired or safe. You just see. That's the real dark method Nietzsche spoke of. The merging of vision and self-awareness, of insight and humility. It's the kind of understanding that burns illusions but lights the soul. And once you reach that point, people's masks no longer fool you. Not because you're cynical, but because you've met your own shadow and survived it. When you learn to see through yourself, you start to see through everyone. And that's when Nietzsche said, you stop being human and start becoming something more. Because truth, once faced, transforms everything it touches. And in that transformation lies the beginning of power. When you finally learn to see through masks, others and your own, something unexpected happens. You stop trying to change people. You stop trying to fix them, expose them, or win against them. Instead, you begin to see life itself for what it is. A grand, raw theater of wills. Each person, each action, each word, a movement of energy, a struggle for meaning, a dance of survival. And suddenly, you're free. Free from illusions, free from false morality, free from the endless emotional chess game that traps most of humanity. Nietzsche said, "The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness before the truth. Because once you see what drives people and what drives you, the world no longer feels like chaos. It becomes transparent. You start to notice patterns others miss. The same people who gossip to feel superior. The same ones who play the victim to gain sympathy. The ones who seek constant attention because silence reminds them of their emptiness. And even the ones who preach morality because it gives them secret power. It's all a language, the language of hidden wills. And once you can read it, you no longer get emotionally pulled into it. That's Nietzsche's dark liberation. When you stop being fooled by appearances, nothing can control you anymore. But there's a paradox here, one Nietzsche warned about. He said, "He who fights monsters must see to it that he does not become a monster." Because the danger of seeing through everyone's mask is that you might stop believing in anything at all. You might become detached, cold, superior, thinking you're above everyone's games. That's the shadow of awareness, when your insight turns into cynicism, when understanding people becomes judging them, when wisdom becomes pride. Nietzsche feared that this happens to most who awaken too fast. They see the lies and think, everyone is fake. They see weakness and think, everyone is lost. But the real philosopher, the one who has gone through the fire of truth, does not despise humanity. He understands it. He doesn't laugh at the masks anymore, because he knows that every mask is a shield against unbearable pain. He doesn't mock weakness, because he has faced his own. That's when awareness becomes compassion, not the naive compassion of pity, but the deep compassion of someone who has seen everything and still chooses to love. Nietzsche's ultimate lesson wasn't about control, it was about creation. He didn't want people to become cold manipulators. He wanted them to become self-creators, individuals so aware, so honest, so powerful within, that they no longer need to wear a mask at all. He called this the rise of the Übermensch, the overman, not a ruler over others but a ruler over oneself, someone who shapes their own meaning, their own values, their own truth, without fear, without guilt, without lies. To reach that point, you have to die, not physically but psychologically. You have to let the false self crumble, the identity built from approval, pride, fear, and past wounds. You have to let go of every excuse, every comforting illusion. Only then, Nietzsche said, does transformation begin. He wrote, "You must become the flame that consumes itself, so that it may shine." To live without masks is to burn every disguise until all that's left is your essence, fierce, free, uncorrupted. Let's imagine this vividly. You're walking through life, surrounded by people wearing masks, charm, morality, humility, intellect. You see the movements, the motives, the fear behind their eyes. But instead of despising them, you feel calm. You no longer need validation. You no longer fear rejection. You no longer react to manipulation. Because you know who you are, and you've accepted every shadow inside you. That's the secret Nietzsche wanted us to learn. You can't see through others until you've made peace with yourself. Once you do, no one can lie to you anymore, because lies only work on those who still lie to themselves. And that's the final stage of Nietzsche's dark method. Not control, not superiority, but serenity. A serenity that comes from knowing everyone is acting out their will to power, and so am I. And when you embrace that truth, the world stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror. Nietzsche's wisdom wasn't a call to darkness. It was a call to depth. He wanted people to descend into the dark, not to drown, but to discover what light truly means. He said, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." That's the destination. Ownership of your mind, your emotions, your truth. Because when you own yourself, you can walk through deception untouched. You can love without being naive, help without being used, and see the world clearly without bitterness. That's not darkness, that's mastery. So, if you want to see through anyone's mask, start with yourself. Study your reactions, your desires, your anger, your pride. Watch them like a scientist, not to destroy them, but to understand them. Because the moment you understand yourself, the illusions of others no longer blind you. Their masks fade into transparency. Their power loses its hold. And that's when transformation happens. Quietly, inwardly, permanently. You don't become cynical. You become awake. In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy is not about controlling others. It's about freeing yourself. Free from lies. Free from fear. Free from every identity that isn't truly yours. When you stop reacting and start seeing, when you stop judging and start understanding, when you stop pretending and start being, that's when you've mastered the dark method. Not to manipulate, but to transcend. So remember, to see through masks is not to lose hope in people. It's to finally see them as they are. And when you can do that, nothing and no one can control you ever again. If this message opened something inside you, a spark of awareness, a quiet realization, then don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with someone who's ready to wake up. And subscribe, because the next journey into philosophy will take you even deeper into the hidden corners of the human soul.